Okay, so for calls, we're going to conclude the Maamre, even though we see a dense piece coming. So the last point he said was he's connecting all the Rabbeim. If your father's okay, he's not here. Oh, here he is, just walked in. Okay. So the Rebbe is connecting all the Rabbeim. He quoted the Tzemach Tzedek, he quoted the Alter Rebbe. Ich will sehr gar nicht, the Rebbe is pointing to Atzmos here. And now the vote of the Rebbe Marash, Naftali Ayola Shlucha, Lashon Nekeva, because Tefillah, that's Naftali, is request. What is the big request? The request is, don't conceal yourself, don't hide. Reveal yourself as you want to do. That's the request. So it's in Lashon Nekeva because who's requesting is Malchus. That's the result of the Tzimtzum. Tash Koichik in Nekeva, Moishe Rabbeinu became weakened, brings in the Ha'ara. Ata Sisus Shamayim V'Sa'ara, it's the hay is missing because the creation of Shamayim V'Ara is a result of the Tzimtzum. But as a result of that, so as a result of the longing, the Tefillah, and the Avodah, so then Handois and Imrei Shefer, he doesn't go into detail, but that words of praise.
Shefer?
Yeah. What?
Shefer or Shofer?
Same thing. Shofer is at the end of the word. Shefer is in the middle of the sentence. Actually, I think it's the Shefer. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It depends if it's the end of the word or end of the sentence or middle of the sentence. Meloshin also, Tainug, it's Tainug Elyon, Atzmos. It means beauty, as we mentioned yesterday. Shoifer is Mamshich. Shoifer, Tkiya Shoifer, it draws the Tainug Elyon, the whole Nisava, once again, into creation in an ever deeper way. So that's alluded to at the end of the Pasuk, that the Avodah of Tefillah, the longing, the Vart of Baal Shem Tov we had earlier, the Kleis HaNefesh, Vaychula, Hashemayim V'Aretz, it's the Kloy and the Kleis HaNefesh that creation feels and it's longing to unite with Hashem as beyond even its creator. Because Behemoth, the level of creator is accessible. That's the ayin that is accessible. But the longing here is not for God as creator, but the mystery of God himself beyond creator. So this is Pearl that the effects and brings about the revelation of Atzmos. Like the Alter Rebbe said, and the Rebbe emphasizes that it's recorded, but that's a Tzedek in Torah, which means it's now an instruction that every Yid can reach this level of Avodah. I want nothing other than you alone, not even that which is with you. In other words, your revelation, your attributes, but you alone. This is all wrought, all brought about through the Gashmizdika components of the Beis Hamikdash, 13, 15. That these components embrace. We did this. That these inyanim, no, we did. These inyanim embrace all of creation. They represent all of creation, and they represent our general Maisen Avodah B'chol Inyan Ilam Haza Tachten Lastly Yisbarach Dir B'Tachtonim. To make this world the dwelling place for Mishom Gufa B'Tachten Shitach L'Mat Imena, not just Tachtonim, the lower worlds, but which is Biyah, but in this world of which there's nothing lower. Shebishvil Zeh Hoya Inyan HaTzimtzum. That's why the Eibishter made the Tzimtzum. is because he wants to create the tachten, and in this tachten, the relationship with us. Now, just to mention here, really, this is a whole sugya shlema, but what he's about to refer to, and referred to earlier in the handwritten note of the Rebbe Ha'ora, and likewise they're going to bring, as you'll see from the Farbrengen of Tu B'Shvat, where the Rebbe addressed this Maimer. And the whole question is, the Maimer talks about one tzimtzum, but there are many tzimtzum. And then he makes a reference to many tzimtzumim as well. First one, then many. So the point is that in the tzimtzum itself, there are two. We read it in the Ha'ora. There's two inyonim, actually two stages. It's not two consequences of one tzimtzum. It's actually two inyonim, two stages. We're not talking time, but we have no other language. So the first thing is the siluk, that the Eibishter removes, as it were, the revelation of his presence. The tzimtzum is not the first step of creation. Obviously, what's the very first step that culminates in creation is not the tzimtzum. It's what? That's what it sounds like when you read the early Kabbalah works. Betchila, they say, at the beginning, the Ein Sof as a Malach, filled all the space, and then God removed it to the side, creating an empty space. That sounds like the starting point. Chassidus says, that we learned in the previous Maimer, it's not the starting point. Because that engendered the question, why call the Eibishter Ein Sof? Call him Ein Litchila, which includes Ein Sof. But Ein Sof doesn't mean Ein Litchila. No end doesn't mean no beginning, but no beginning means no end. Because it's not the starting point. The starting point is the emergence of the Eir. Eir has Aschala. But since Eir is Mein HaMoed, that was the whole point of the previous Maimer, it conveys the true bleakfulness of the Moed in all of its expression. But at any rate, Eir itself is already the first and the most radical step. It's more radical than the Tzimtzum. More radical than the Tzimtzum is the Gilui Eir Ein Sof. Even Eir Mein HaMoed in all of its milas. As we always say, that the whole notion of revelation, right there, that word, revelation of God, is the most fundamental change and impossible, if not for God's choice that it be, impossible reality. Revelation is nothing other than God. There's nowhere to be revealed in or to. There is no otherness. And there cannot be, even after the whole B'chidas Atzmos that didn't change, which is the whole point of Chassidus, to understand or try to grapple with and to recognize the limits of the intellect, but to grapple with this conundrum that God's the only existence that didn't change, and there is also a creation that began with Eir. Bottled b'metzias yichud ilah. Again and again, the Maimer, the Maimarim Chassidus address it in each generation, according to the generation, bringing it down intellectually and also essentially, as the Rebbe does, both intellectually and essentially, both atzmizdik and both profoundly drawn into Chabad, this grappling with this truth, which we can never intellectually or experientially resolve till after Mashiach comes, and that will be the Atat Tetzav, the Etzem brought to bear in every manifestation. Akoponim, at any rate, so let's go back to the words here. Yeah, I started saying, so there's two pu'ulas of the tzimtzum. The number one is the siluk. I mean, again, as I said yesterday, the language is so simple that it lends itself to gross misinterpretation. God removed his light to the side. It's got to get more graphic than that. We have no other language, and the language of Kabbalah is very simple, which is very one of the reasons that it should not be studied on its own. So the first step in the tzimtzum is the removal of his light to the side, creating concealment, hela. What exactly does concealment mean even then? But the pashtus concealment. Now that doesn't mean that the oir. I'm not going to elaborate now. I'm just giving you the what's the word that I use? Not geographical. Geographical facts. The siluk alone, the removal, quote unquote, of the oir to the side, which is again side. What side mean? What is it? Alatzad. At any rate, that does not mean that the oir that's subsequently drawn into this empty space, this vacuum, is fundamentally finite. It could still be a relatively infinite light, a kav, a oir drawn into the makom hachala. There is therefore, now that requires explanation right there, but let's just get the facts straight. This was making this point in the previous order. Handwritten note is base. The fact that the oir, the kav, that is drawn into the makom hachala, into this vacuum, void of God's revealed presence, is finite. That's a separate tzimtzum. That's a separate tzimtzum, not the siluk, but a tzimtzum that pearls, that affects the oir to become a graded, lined kav of higher points and lower points, successive levels of concealment and screening, etc. So when you say one tzimtzum, we're talking about the siluk. The point we said earlier was that doesn't mean that it's going to be a gvuli. The chiddush of the Maimah is that even the second pu'ul of the tzimtzum that creates, now it's getting even more difficult to understand, creates overtly a limited oir, that oir be'etzim is still bli gvul. That's the whole nakud of Toshen Chavbeis, to understand that. In all its manifestations. Notwithstanding the overt limitation, 10 Sfiris and Atzilus, Sfiris and Oilamus altogether, Lifnat Tzimtzum. Oilamus, Sfiris, the word Sfiris means number also. Number. Implying limitation. So in all of the levels of manifestation, there's on the one hand, it's all paradoxical, all of it, everywhere, throughout. On the one hand, there's some level of gvul, and the chiddush is no, that even in the gvul, bli gvul. All the way down to Elam Hazeh, Tachten, in physical creation, physical existences, inanimate objects, and certainly living creatures. Within them, the pearl is bli gvul, notwithstanding their overt identity, clearly defined gvul. And all the way up, Lifnei Tzimtzum is also gvul. What's the gvul Lifnei Tzimtzum? The infinite worlds. A world is gvul. Olam, Sfiris, you're talking limitation. You're talking description of sorts. Descriptions beyond us. Endless descriptions. But descriptions nonetheless. The chiddush, the point of Toshen Chavbeis, is that in all of it, notwithstanding again the overt identity, the panemius of it is bli gvul. That's what the Maimer is hammering home. What I'm saying now is this, that there's two inyanim in the tzimtzum, there's two aspects. The siluk alone does not mean that the oir drawn into the makom challah thereafter is gvul. It could still be a relatively bli gvul oir in the makom challah. There's a second pull of the tzimtzum, and many pulls after that, lower and lower, that makes the kav gvul. Okay? Now, having said that, let's learn the mind bit inside now. The tzimtzum that was in the Eretz of the loyrak tzimtzum lashon yochid, not only one tzimtzum, because that only the one tzimtzum, the siluk, doesn't mean that what emerges thereafter, the kav, the projection of the divine, is finite. It can be an infinite projection of the divine in the makom hachala, which begs the question it will then just undo what the Tzimtzum did. So what does this mean of having a kav that is not medida v'akabala? Lo pashut, this is ayin beis in pages and pages and pages. We can suggest, we'll just leave it. If we get this technical understanding a little bit, for right now, dayenu. So well, that's where he says, not just one tzimtzum, because if it's just one tzimtzum, the siluk, and moreover, he actually implies here also the tzimtzumim in the oir, one tzimtzum that would produce atzilus. It's not just that. Alakatera Sabal Shem, like we said, we quoted earlier. Shuvla El Shakalish Borucho Sakamet Tzimtzum Derech Kama Ilamis. David made many tzimtzumim through many worlds. There's all the Moshe Baal Shem Tov, like a father that gets down. Why does God do this? You need this whole process. You want a world, it could happen that way. It could be a tziva. It doesn't come through dibur, another word. Tziva. That's the primus. It is tziva. But that could then just, Hashem himself could just will creation into being. That happens instantly without any process. The whole about Baal Shem Tov is that he made many tzimtzum. The father gets down to the world of the child. He didn't just make a kid, but he gets down to his world. That's the tzimtzum, the relationship that the Eibishter wants with the tachten, which he could make without any of the tzimtzumim. But then he wouldn't be getting down to our world and talking our language. So the Lashon Kama, so the Baal Shem Tov's Lashon is he made Kama. Kama means many. How many is many? So the Rebbe says, Meira al misbar bilti mesuya is endless tzimtzumim. Endless tzimtzumim. Yeah. In truth, is this endless tzimtzumim without end. We'll look at the Rebbe's, this is from the Fabrengen from Bishvat in a moment. Let's just read inside. The kiv and sheyesh olam is beli mispar. Since lifnat tzimtzum this infinite world, Kamashakos of Alomis in this particular pasuk says, and maidens without end al tikar Alomis, don't read maidens ela oilamis. This is in Shirashirim worlds. So there's infinite worlds. There's a tzimtzum for each world. This is lifnat tzimtzum. Lifnat tzimtzum is ein sof tzimtzumim. How's that? Harei b'meli yesh gam tzimtzumim b'li mispar tzimtzum l'chol olam. So there's a tzimtzum for each world, endless tzimtzumim producing the endless worlds, the endless spheres and the endless worlds. For klol, it's called like tzimtzum nechlakim gimel tzimtzumim kloliyim, and the tzimtzumim are divided, as he says in Tanya, and there's three general tzimtzumim. You can look at our 11. Tanya Perek Mem Tes. Prote Pchinus Hahester V'Helem Otzmo Misafa. The details of the concealment, Otzmo mean, are too powerful, endless to number. Ach derech klal, but they fall into three broad categories. Sem shleisha mini tzimtzum matzumim kloliyim. There are three powerful tzimtzumim. L'shleisha mini oilam is kloliyim, for the three general worlds, which are bri yitzir asiyah. You get the general idea. Actually, you know what we're going to do, Be'ez Hashem? We're going to learn inside the sikha that they quote from. Let's look at Ha'ora Yud, which I don't know, why they decided to put it in here like this. Why not? They addressed it later, and they put it in. I'm saying, I don't think it's the Rebbe's instruction to do so. So let's just read this now. Let's read it together.
Then why would it be above the line? Why would it be one of the oisius instead of a number?
It is Lashon Harav. It's Lashon Harav said elsewhere, added later. Above the line are things that Rebbe said in actual Maimed. So anything which was added later. So in these ha'oras with the aleph base, the Rebbe adds either b'ksav yad kodshay, or in this case, which is unusual, first time I'm seeing it, they are adding it from what the Rebbe said, but later. So let's read it together. We just finished saying there are many tzimtzumim. So the Bible, so I mentioned only one tzimtzum. I don't have it. Who has the? They have the original Maimah here. Yeah, they do. Just want to quickly look at Yeshud Beis. He just mentions one tzimtzum in the middle. So how is it? You go from Bligul Svidus to Svidus. In Mispah, where's the lashon of the Yeshud Beis? One second, Marshall, that's as He just mentions, that's all he says. It's in the middle of the ois. He doesn't know about the Kama Tzimtzumim. Now, before, let's go back. Before we read this order, let's go back to the previous order of the Rebbe. Let's go, please go back to Ha'orah Beis. You have it, Ha'orah Beis? In Ois Daled. Yeah? Yeah, hello, folks. Yeah. So what he's saying, the Pnim, addresses this also. It's just inyan tzimtzum. Now, what component of the tzimtzum we're talking about? Not the siluk, because the siluk, this is what I just shared earlier, it's from Ha'orah Beis. Let's read inside again. The siluk doesn't mean that the oir projected thereafter is gvul. Hakavana kan the pulas tzimtzum sha'oir vagilu yiyah b'pchinas mid gvul. It's a separate pa'ula. Separate pa'ula that the subsequent light, the projection of the divine light, that use physical imagery, that's drawn into this vacuum, that should be gvul. That's what we're talking about. Not the first tzimtzum, first stage of this great tzimtzum, which is the removal of his great light to the side. Why? As we just said, tzimtzum, the siluk first stage, it doesn't affect, has nothing to do with what kind of oil is going to be drawn in. It doesn't mean because he was misalik that the next stage is going to project the light, is going to be cool. But then Hashem did decide to do so in the second stage to project a finite projection. Shetzimtzum hapoel ba'anal. The chiddush is that the tzimtzum there, not the siluk. That's the second aspect of the tzimtzum. Does affect the oir, making it finite. Its infinite property remains, notwithstanding its overt finite definition. That's the point of the mind. Clear? Yes? Friends, I need heads up. Yeah, okay. Now, this is order. How do you? We just finished saying that the whole point is the many tzimtzumim. The many tzimtzumim that pale further and further limitation all the way down to our world. And why has the Baal Shem Tov taught? Because the Father descends level to level down to the kids level, speaking childish language. So why does the Maimah use the Lashon Yachid? Well, because, in other words, to make the question stronger, when you use tzimtzum in the singular, that seems to talk about the siluk, and it's the rest, and that's a one pula, and that we just finished reading in our other base. The removal doesn't mean that the light projected thereafter is going to be an overtly finite revelation. The whole point is the tzimtzumim. It's all the many tzimtzumim on the earth, more finite, more gvul. So that raises the question that the Rebbe addressed it in the Farbrengen of Tu B'Shvat. It's 2 Farbrengens later. Parsha B'Shalach came to B'Shvat. It's on hookup. So he addresses the question. So Marshem B'Mayim Tzimtzum Loshen Yochid. When we're talking about many tzimtzumim, lefish b'mayim zen legeya raka inyan deirin sof lamata mata din tachlis. The one point of the Maimer is in Oisyud base is to explain that the Ein Sof is present in all of its revelation manifestations, all the way down to the lowest level. Shegam lamata, even down here, even though the mata comes as a result of the tzimtzum, become mokem nishara Ein Sof. The remains bepnimius and fundamentally infinite, and therefore even the mata expresses these infinite properties. He's not in this seif. Nochis means literally what? No. Nochis, Hanach put something down. He's not getting into, you say, not getting into here, not getting into the whole subject of the different tzimtzumim. He's a sugya acheres, that's another sugya. That is not, there's no relationship to the Maimer here. There's so much so he doesn't go into that whole subject. Doesn't even mention the first primary step of the tzimtzum, which is the removal of the eye, the removal. That needs to be before the many tzimtzumim that peil hakbal in the eye. They'll be saying in simple words here. The point of why is he mentioned the word tzimtzum? One, because he's only dealing with one aspect of all of the tzimtzumim, and that is that it pearls one aspect. It pearls hakbala in the oil. That's what we're talking about here. Not talking about the siluk or the different kinds of tzimtzumim, just this fundamental, simple, common truth of all the tzimtzumim. What are these all tzimtzumim doing? Making the light more gvul. What we're going to do, Beis Hashem, tomorrow is learn that sikha inside, because then translates it in avodah a little bit. It goes into more detail. It's very geschmack. So I'll make a photocopy and I'll send it to you. I looked at it very briefly last night, very late, frankly. So I'm looking forward to learning it together tomorrow. Okay, Tavshin Ben Beis to Bishvat, with the Rabbi addresses the mind.